What's up everybody, Andy Shea from Movement Reborn, and today we're going to be talking about the 6 different types of core activation. Now it's going to be a very interesting topic because almost all of us don't understand that there's so many different ways to fire up the core. So everybody's got a different definition of what the core actually is. Ultimately, my definition of the core is everything that stabilizes the spine. So the core could be from your chest to the lats to the deep abdominal muscles, which is typically what we think the core is, to the lower back, spina erectors, multifidus, all of those little muscles in this whole region. I personally believe every single one of those muscles have to be able to learn how to communicate, coil, move around each other as connected as possible in order for the whole body to have that stability that we're typically looking for. And in my personal opinion, if there's a disconnect in how the brain is responding to how these muscles and tissues are connecting with each other, that's typically why we get injured over time. So now that you understand what the core typically is, let's go to the 6 main core activations that we typically are missing. So the first one is bracing. Second is hollowing. Third is pulling or sucking in. Fourth is drawing up. Fifth is pushing out. And the last one is this passive soft core stability and activation that we typically should have on a daily basis. So there are so many different other types as well, but I believe that these are the 6 fundamental ones that I personally feel we need to learn how to own over time. It's not something you're gonna get immediately. Maybe we have 1 or 2 of these, but we don't know how to regulate through all of them. So the more we can practice these different types of core activations, the easier it's gonna be for our body to respond to stressors of everyday life or movement and stuff like that. So now let's dig into what each of these core activations actually mean. And I'll give you my typical cues of how to try and activate them to the best that you can. It's going to take a lot of practice. So the first and most common core activation is abdominal bracing. It's like when someone's about to punch you in the stomach and you gotta tighten up. And I just realized it will probably be easier for me to do this. By the way, I had to starve myself for over 4 days just so that you can see this a little bit. I'm just kidding, that is complete garbage. Anyway, abdominal bracing is the most common thing that we typically need to understand. And that, think about when someone's about to punch you in the stomach and you go, huh, and you tighten things up, that's bracing. We typically need it to lift weights, to carry stuff, or when we're laughing so hard, like when you go, oh my god, that was terrible. But that is bracing. So it's like when you laugh so hard, or when you sneeze, or you cough, and you cough so much that your core is just burning, that is abdominal bracing. So the easiest way for me to typically cue my clients to try and get this brace is to actually tell them to push the hands into their stomach and then do a cough and notice like the hands push out. So if you're trying to cough and hold that cough and still be able to breathe and talk and stuff, that is the toughest part about bracing, is that when you're braced and everything is taut and the abs are hard, even if you have body fat over it, it doesn't matter. It's not that your core is weak. All the muscles underneath should still be able to fire if you know how to fire them. Notice I'm still talking and I'm bracing at the same time. That's a more advanced version that you should be able to still breathe, not like a full breath. If I take a huge breath, then everything will open and then this becomes soft again. But you can brace and take a good like 50% of breath and still keep this pretty taut the entire time. So that is abdominal bracing. So the second version is hollowing, which is basically an advanced version of bracing if you think about it. A lot of athletes who do hand balancing stuff, so like gymnasts and stuff, they have to teach the hollow. So if they're in the handstand over here and the arms are behind the head, notice the ribs flare out. So hollowing, basically you're flattening the ribs into the body, and when you do that, notice the pelvis kind of tucks underneath and then the ribs cave in even more, so your body makes like this dome position. So the lower back flattens out a little bit, as the lower back rounds out a little bit, the core pins in and the ribs flatten, so your pelvis is rotating underneath and the ribs are doing this. So think of it like you're going into a banana, like the concave version of the banana. Convex? Concave? Concave. I think it is concave. So it's when it rounds in, so the body goes like this. That's what hollowing is. So very important if you're doing like a plank position on your elbows and you're tucking the pelvis and you're holding that position, that's what hollowing is. If you miss that hollow because your gravity is pulling down on your lower back and then the hollow dissipates, then you end up putting pressure onto the lower back, which is why so many people get lower back issues when they're planking so hard and stuff, trying to do core exercises. If you're not hollowing out, you're basically not utilizing your core anymore, utilizing your lower back to do the plank instead of your core to do the plank. So how you do it is very, very important. The third version is the most common thing when people think about activating the core, and that is when they say suck your belly in, like you're doing this, or it's pulling or sucking in. That is the third version of what we think core activation is, and that's what most of us typically do if we never learned how to truly brace first. So sucking in or pulling in, most of the time you just go ugh! And you're trying to like have a small waist and all of that stuff. That's literally just sucking in, and there's actually no stability going on in there. You're basically just drawing the belly button in, and then notice like the ribs are still caving out. Yeah, and there's no stability happening into the stomach. So that is something I do not recommend. If that's all you know how to do, that is probably the reason why you have aches and pains and instability within your core muscles. Now the fourth version is drawing up. And that's, if you think about ballet, when they're lifting the body and they're getting tall, so the ribs are still up, you're lengthening up the abdominals and you're pulling in at the same time. So you want to be able to lift the body. Notice my body actually gets taller, the torso gets longer, and then you're adding tension to like pull under you so that your whole body can be extended. And this is not a bad thing, but if this is the only thing we know how to do, notice in this position, the lower back is activating really hard along with the core. So both of these are equally tense, and then they're able to do all the leg movements and all of that type of stuff along with the arms, and then have the body look as elegant and long as possible. But if this is all you know, to stay long, all the tendons, all the ligaments and everything is in this lengthened position, and it doesn't know how to compact down and stay tighter to bring more stability, this could just be a disconnect that the body is just not accustomed to, and over time we might start getting injuries here and there. So the next one is pushing out. When we're breathing very softly, pushing out is something I highly recommend. So it's not something we want to do under tension, it's something we want to do under relaxation, as in belly breathing and stuff. So in yoga, they talk about that all the time. In meditation, we literally just think of breathing into the low belly muscles over here, and that's when you push out, and then when you exhale, you can either keep that pushing out or you can draw in again. So breathing with the belly, that's what we're talking about. Why is my stomach rumbling when I do that? That is interesting. That's kind of what we want, to learn how to breathe passively by pushing down and breathing into the belly, and then exhaling, we can draw back up. That is what I typically recommend pushing out to be. Now the next one is the soft passive activation, as in learning how to fire the core while we're relaxed. That is also so important that we don't usually think about it. So if we know how to brace, most of the times we're like, oh, I have good posture, I'm braced, I have to be here the whole time. But you're in so much tension the entire time just trying to be in typically a relaxed position. So posture should actually be passive. It should be reflexive. You shouldn't have to think about it in order to be in a good neutral posture. If your body is naturally just sitting in that structure the entire time, it should be effortless. So learning how to regulate your core through all of these positions is what the soft passive activation actually means. So if we're walking around on a daily basis, like just walking back and forth and stuff, you shouldn't have to think of bracing. When you're running, you don't brace the core. If you're braced here the whole time and you're just bouncing up and down instead of shifting the weight and actually being relaxed, the body is like a suspension of the car. If it's hard the entire time and it's always stiff, it's going to be a very bumpy ride. We want the body to be able to absorb force and be able to regulate. So when we're walking, we shouldn't be tight the whole time, or else you walk like a brick. We should be relaxed and just chill through all the movements and stuff like that. So this should be moderately taught, maybe like 5 or 10% that is there. So every time you step, the core fires a little bit and then learns to let go. It fires, let's go, fires, let's go, fires, let's go. Every single step, there's a split second where it fires and stabilizes, and then a split second where it completely lets go. So we want that on, off, on, off, on, off. It shouldn't be on the entire time. So learning how to breathe passively while you're braced, while you're pushing out, while you're drawing up, like learning how to own your core in all of these positions is the whole message that I'm trying to get to today. Alright, it's cold, so I'm putting my hoodie back on. Now, that was the main 6 ways to fire up the core, and the whole idea is to teach your body how to regulate between all of it. Because the most common thing that I see why so many of us end up getting lower back issues or actually just pain anywhere in the body is that we have a disconnect of how to regulate between all 6 different types of core activation. Sometimes we're just too braced and that's the only thing we know. Other times we're too hollowed out, or we're just always sucking in without any stability, or we're always pulling without knowing how to brace or let go and be soft. So the whole idea is to be able to undulate between all of these and learn how to access the core in multiple different ways so that your body will become more and more resilient to anything that you want to do in everyday life, whether it's playing extreme sports or just walking around and doing daily activities. So what happened with me is that I only knew how to brace. I only knew where neutral was. So when I had to break free from neutral and pick up something that was weird and obtuse, and I'd injure my back picking up something that's 5, 10, 20 pounds, and I could deadlift 300 pounds in the gym, no problem. So if we have that disconnect, there's going to be a lot of issues. And the more I learned how to fire up my core in all of these different ways, pain literally just magically disappeared. And that was just my case, but most of my clients are getting that as well. And the people who aren't getting that progress is still because there's some type of disconnect over here, and it takes a long time to figure that out. Everyone responds to completely different cues. You might be so confused watching this video. Hopefully I try to explain it in a way that makes sense, but the sad part is it only makes sense if you feel what you're supposed to be feeling. So I highly recommend you to keep exploring different movement practices, from yoga to swimming to slight jogging to long walks to hiking to everything outside of the gym as well. The more variety you expose your body to, the easier it is for the brain to start feeling what it's supposed to feel. But the most important thing is to try and pay attention to everything that you're doing. So always focus on the intent of how am I actually feeling my core in this exercise? What do I want to get out of this workout or this movement or this hike or whatever? The more you learn to tune in, the faster you will naturally progress. Hopefully that helps summarize this a little bit better. Now, if you really are confused and you want another separate video specifically on one of these categories, shoot me a comment below on which one interests you the most, and I'll film my next video on that. And I'll probably do more of a movement-based type of thing so that you can actually see the practical applications of it instead of just talking theoretically in this box over here. So if you want to learn more about activating the core and feeling all of these things in a whole sequential manner, Movement Unwound is my online program that you can purchase for $30. It's on my website and on this link. Feel free to download that and explore your movement capacity as you go. If this type of content resonates you, hit that red button to subscribe. I would really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. My name is Andy Shea. Peace!